Kelly, if you're thinking about buying a new house, keep in mind that we're all in this together. You can't just go off and do this alone. When you married Ryan, you didn't just marry him. You joined our family too. We are tied together by destiny, united by our shared experiences and aspirations. Why are you trying to pull away from us? This new phase in your life should be experienced with Ryan, not away from the family that cares about you. Letting go can be hard, but it's a part of maturing. Ryan remains a part of our family, and now that you're married to him, so are you. I understand you value our family connection, even though it might seem confining at times. Despite your doubts, I plan to move in with you. It doesn't matter if you're against the idea. I can't let you cut these ties. If you don't agree to this, I might even push for a divorce. Fine. Let's go ahead with the divorce then. When I mentioned it, they seemed surprisingly content. It looked like they were excited at the thought of me moving into a new house, which effectively pushed me out of the family circle. I felt a sense of relief at distancing myself from my husband's family, who I had become tired of. However, on the day I moved, my phone was flooded with urgent calls from my mother-in-law. It seemed she had finally realized she had walked into a trap I had set. What is going on here? This isn't what we agreed on. How can you be forgiven for this? She demanded. But by then, there was nothing I could do. We were already divorced, and I was no longer connected to your family. I urged her to quietly accept the situation and continue living in her house. Unexpectedly, Ryan joined the conversation. Do you think you can just get away with this? I didn't realize you were such an unreasonable person. I don't know why I married you. I could say the same to you, I replied, leaving him speechless. I hope his family, who always thinks of themselves, faces challenges that teach them a lesson. My name is Kelly, and I'm 28 years old. I work at a real estate agency, a career I embarked upon after college, after graduating from university. My role mainly involves hosting clients that salespeople bring in, rather than making sales myself. This keeps me mostly indoors, but it also means interacting with a diverse group of people, possibly more so than at other companies. Thanks to this work environment, I met someone a few years ago, and we eventually married. My husband was incredibly understanding and always prioritized my needs when we first met. When I introduced him to my friends, they were quite envious. Kelly, your husband is truly a good man, they would say. It's rare to find someone as remarkable as him. You won't find anyone like him anywhere else. You're incredibly lucky. And it's wonderful that you, being such a good person, have met someone who matches your kindness. It's truly heartwarming to receive such praise. I've never met anyone as outstanding as he is, so I fully intend to cherish him. We haven't been married very long, so I am still discovering new aspects of his life and personality. However, since we were together for a significant time before getting married, I feel I know him quite well. It seems like everyone around us is settling down. But out of all, your husband stands out as the best. Not many people are as considerate towards their spouse as he is. While that might be true, I still feel a bit uneasy. I'm not entirely familiar with his family background, and there's always the potential for issues with in-laws. Although they seemed quite welcoming when we met, If he's such an excellent husband, presumably his parents are decent people as well. Still, it's hard to be completely certain about what the future holds. Should anything arise, remember you can always confide in me. I'm here to support you. Kelly. Thank you so much. I'm genuinely touched to hear that. I apologize for relying on you so often. My friend. You've given my husband such high praise. And it only makes me love him more. When others recognize his qualities, it reinforces just how important he is to me and reminds me to appreciate him more. Especially post-marriage. He continues to be a wonderful person, always putting me first. I've heard that many people change after getting married. So I'm truly grateful, even though he remains his considerate self. A few months into our marriage, I began noticing unusual behavior in my husband. He started making frequent trips to his parents' home. And since I wasn't privy to what he was doing there, I felt compelled to ask him about it. You've been visiting your parents quite often recently. What's going on there? If there's an issue at home, I hope you would share it with me. Is there anything you feel you can't discuss with me? He responded, there's nothing special going on. I just want to visit home. Should there be a reason I shouldn't? His reply seemed dismissive. Unfortunately, it's not that I'm trying to pry, but you've seemed off lately. If you're having troubles at work, you can talk to me about anything. Given his background in real estate, I suggested, since you have some free time, maybe you could look for a new house for us. You're a real estate agent. It should be easy for you. All right. I'll start searching for a house for us to live in. Do you have any specific preferences? He asked, seemingly ready to embrace the task. Thinking about the future possibility of children, he expressed his desire to find a spacious home. While I wasn't too keen on his tone, the idea of him planning for our future family brought me joy. It's rare for all couples to react positively to such discussions. But since he had been visiting his parents' house so often, this new focus was a relief to me. With that in mind, I started looking for our ideal home. During my search, I found several promising properties and decided to share these options with my husband. Knowing his thorough approach to decision-making, I didn't expect an immediate answer but was keen to hear his thoughts. When he returned from work, I excitedly presented him with the listings, making it clear that while we didn't need to rush our decision, I valued his opinion since we would be living in this house for many years. Just as we were about to delve deeper into the discussion, I casually mentioned that my mother and sister were coming to stay with us starting that day. Surprised and upset, he was frustrated that I hadn't informed him earlier, which made it difficult for him to prepare for their arrival on such short notice. I thought I had mentioned their visit, but amidst all our discussions and plans, it might have slipped my mind due to the busyness of work. It must have slipped my mind. I tried to reassure him that it was just a minor oversight and not worth getting upset over. However, he was frustrated, feeling that this unexpected news overshadowed our important discussion about our future home. He pointed out that discussing real estate at work was different from planning our own home. A sentiment I understood deeply since I had been fitting in house hunting between work commitments. It hurt to hear him suggest that I might not want to talk about our home life, especially when I was genuinely enthusiastic about us choosing a home together. As the conversation became more heated, I felt misunderstood. My in-laws, who were not particularly fond of me, added to the stress, making me feel even more defensive. Their past behavior had been quite aggressive, and although I hadn't shared this with anyone, it was a source of anxiety for me. Amidst the chaos of family dynamics and house hunting, all I wanted was to feel supported and understood by my husband as we planned for our future together. I've been feeling incredibly overwhelmed lately, and although I don't want to burden my husband with my stress, it's disheartening to notice his lack of empathy toward the situation. Before we were married, he was extremely attentive and always went out of his way to make me feel special. It seems like his efforts have tapered off now that we're married. Perhaps he feels he no longer needs to try as hard since I'm already his wife. Despite these feelings, considering divorce isn't a simple option because of our marital commitment. So I've resigned myself to preparing for his family's visit. While I was still getting the house ready, his family arrived unexpectedly. They criticized me for still tidying up, accusing me of being sloppy and questioning what my husband saw in me. I apologized and explained that I was unaware of their visit. Had I known, I would have prepared accordingly. They dismissed my explanation, insisting that the house should have been clean regardless of their visit, which I found unfair since the house wasn't in a terrible state. I asked them to wait a bit longer while I finished up, suggesting they relax upstairs with my husband. Their constant critiques are wearing me down. It seems they hold my husband in high regard and have set unrealistically high expectations for me. I remember hearing that his family even advised him against getting married, unlike most families who usually welcome their children's marriages. His family seems to be an exception. His sister-in-law chose to stay unmarried to remain close to the family. After we married, I felt powerless in the face of their cruel remarks. If anyone should be confronted about these issues, it should be my husband for choosing to marry. But no matter what they say, he doesn't stand by me, even when I directly express my concerns to him. The tension heightened when I discovered they were staying with us due to renovations at their home. My discomfort increased when my husband told me I should get used to their presence and try to get along with them. I was upset he hadn't informed me earlier about such an important issue. When I asked how long they would be staying, he vaguely said it might be indefinitely, stressing that we are now one family and I should be accommodating. Moreover, we are also looking for a new house, which adds to the complexity of the situation. This sudden and prolonged invasion of my personal space by his family, coupled with my husband's indifference, is becoming unbearably stressful. If this continues, I fear the strain might be too much to bear. Are you considering having them live with us even in the new house? When you mentioned needing a home that could accommodate a large family, was this your intention? If we're considered family, then please don't disregard my feelings. There's no need for anger. We're family after all. Whether it's living with 2 people or 4. The solution seems straightforward: find a house that can fit all of us. Sometimes the comments my husband makes are baffling. Why must we live with 4 people right after we've gotten married? I was concerned about this before we got married, and they assured me there was no chance we'd end up in a multi-generational home. Yet, now that we're married, being suddenly told this is deeply troubling. It seems that the 3 of them, his mother, sister, and he, have moved this conversation along quite a bit without my involvement. I'm left wondering about the specifics of the new house. We should look for a place with a spacious garden. Given that she works in real estate, she should be able to help. He married a real estate agent to ensure we found the right home. It was clear that his main motivation was to have someone capable of securing a suitable property. While she may not excel in other areas, her ability to find us a house was key. As we move forward discreetly with the plan, securing a good house is our top priority. I was oblivious to such schemes being concocted behind my back. To think the main reason he married me was just to get a house. Ryan might have his reasons, but it was clear that the main objective for his mother and sister was to acquire a piece of property. They had initially presented themselves as warm and welcoming before the marriage. However, once the wedding celebrations were over, their true colors emerged, and Ryan increasingly spent more time at his family's residence. Upon realizing their real motives, my patience wore thin. After enduring relentless harassment and exploitation from them, which was completely unacceptable, I decided that the only viable solution was to seek a divorce. They tried to control and manipulate me, but I am determined to make them regret their actions. Despite harboring these feelings, I maintained a composed facade during the family meeting, acting as though I was oblivious to their scheming. Would it be all right if I took charge of the decisions regarding the house? I'll make sure it accommodates all four of us comfortably, so there's no need to worry. After all, you have the expertise. Please find us a lovely home. My sister is looking for a property with a spacious garden, and my mother is keen on having pets. So please keep those needs in mind. In response, they mentioned, finding a house with a generous garden and a pet-friendly policy isn't a problem since it will be our property. However, securing a large garden might mean we need to consider more rural locations to meet all our preferences. My parents live in a quite rural area, and my dad is currently on a long-term work assignment, so he rarely comes home. Given this situation, it's fine to proceed with the house decisions. I understand that you haven't been informed about my dad's situation, but since you're a real estate agent and both of my parents trust you completely, there's no need to worry about getting their approval. Just go ahead with the plans, and I'll take responsibility for any issues that may arise. After all, this arrangement is only until the house renovations are complete, so there's no need to overthink it. Although my husband suggests that we're planning to live together as a family of 4, but I have my doubts about this arrangement. I've caught snippets of conversations that suggest they might not trust me as much as I thought and could be exploiting my position. Despite plans of living together, I'm actually strategizing to avoid a permanent cohabitation once we buy a new house. I'm weighing my options carefully as I make these plans. In the meantime, I'm dealing with challenges from my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. My sister-in-law, who has recently become unemployed, moved in with us and has started to ask for financial support. She knows about the good salaries that real estate agents make and has offered to manage my finances due to her background in bank administration. However, I prefer my finances to be handled by my bank. Despite my explanation, she persists in trying to manage my money, arguing that since I married into the family, it's natural to share financial responsibilities. She even suggested gambling with my money, which I am completely against. After a prolonged conversation where I stood my ground, she threatened to drive a wedge between my husband and me. The family dynamics are becoming more complex, and I'm trying my best to handle the situation with care and diplomacy. If you can improve this text, I think he would appreciate it. However, this is a matter you should discuss with him, not me. I don't understand how you can speak so poorly of my brother. His earnings are so modest. It's really disheartening. If you continue to talk like this, I can't forgive you. Are you implying that I don't deserve sympathy? I just can't follow your reasoning. Moreover, I have no intention of lending you any money. Realizing she couldn't get any financial help from me, my sister-in-law left. It seemed she finally understood that her efforts were in vain against my firm stance. Yet, I'm puzzled by how she not only wants to live in our house but also demands money. The more stress they cause me, the more severe the consequences I plan to impose. Still, I didn't expect my sister-in-law to give up so readily. So I've decided to remain vigilant. The next morning, as I checked my bag, I discovered that the money I had set aside for utility bills was missing. Given the timing, I had no choice, but I began to suspect that my sister-in-law was misappropriating funds. After keeping an eye on her activities for a while, it was confirmed that she had been taking not only money intended for utility bills but also cash from my wallet. However, my sister-in-law isn't the only source of my stress. My mother-in-law is just as problematic. Have you not chosen the new house yet? Hurry up, or the renovations here will be done. I want to move into the new house soon. So make a decision quickly, she urged. Finding a suitable house quickly is difficult. We need a reasonably large space to comfortably fit for adults. Let's settle on something soon. It's too cramped here. How much longer do you intend to make us suffer? She added. It goes without saying that it was her idea to live with us. And now I'm struggling to accommodate her demands. Just choose a house quickly, please. And make sure we can move in by the week after next. Or I'll have you divorce my son, she threatened. Under normal circumstances, such a statement would be distressing. But for me, who is already contemplating a divorce from Ryan, this actually sounds like a relief. I chose to take her words as a push to act. Thus, regardless of what is said, there is no room for argument after all. These words came directly from her. After locating a house as they requested, I discussed it with Ryan. He proposed that we put the house in his name to maintain appearances. Hey, Ryan. I understand you're taking care of the down payment. Right. We can split the ongoing mortgage payments between us. I'm relieved the down payment is manageable. However, I have some concerns about the house's ownership. I would prefer if the house were in my name. In case something unexpected happens, I want to ensure it's legally recognized as mine. I hope that's okay with you. Before we proceed with signing the contract, are you sure we've addressed everything concerning the house? I wouldn't want you to have any regrets or complaints later on. Also, have you considered what your mom and my sister-in-law prefer? If we take their preferences into account, I promise not to make a fuss over minor issues. It might be wise to double-check with them. I will ensure to review the content once again just to be safe. I want to do this to prevent any possible complaints from them later. They sometimes quickly shift blame, which concerns me. I will confirm everything with them by tomorrow. And if all is well, I will finalize the contract, provided it is in my name. Considering all factors, I have decided to touch base with both of them again to make sure there are no issues in the future. With my experience in real estate, they depend on me to choose the right property. And it's important that we are all in agreement. I have already located a potential new home for us that features a large garden and is pet-friendly. Just as you both mentioned. However, I understand you both plan to move soon. So as long as the garden is spacious, it should be suitable. I know I have been criticized for working slowly, but I am ensuring everything is perfect. This house is indeed larger and fulfills our dream of being pet-friendly. So I am ready to proceed with the contract for this house. You don't need to worry about further checks. Let's finalize the contract soon. How much longer do you expect us to stay in our current home? It feels like you're not prioritizing your family's needs, which can be frustrating. Since I've received confirmation from both concerned parties, there's no reason for them to complain later. Plus, we're only splitting the cost of the house, with you handling the down payment, which significantly eases the financial burden on my end. I usually wouldn't handle this situation as well without the financial support from my mother-in-law. Once the contract is complete, and I've informed Ryan, we should be all set. My mother and sister called me into a meeting, and it was clear they had made a decision. Finally, you've chosen a house, they said, though their tone suggested disappointment. You really aren't very proficient at your job. Well, we'll all be living together now, so please try to do your best. By living together, I assumed they meant temporarily, during the renovation period. You mean until the renovation is over, right? I asked, seeking clarification. Oh, didn't I tell you? Yes. Indeed, we are renovating. But we've already sold the old house. We're planning to live together permanently, my mother informed me casually, as if it were a minor detail. I was completely taken aback by the news. I wasn't informed about this at all. How could you not mention such a critical decision? If this was planned, I should have been part of the conversation from the start. Why does it make a difference if we live together temporarily or permanently? Consider it merely an extension of our current arrangement, my sister replied, attempting to diminish the significance of her announcement. Do you genuinely dislike living with us so much? My mother asked, her voice laced with accusation. Feeling cornered and misunderstood, I explained, Mom, it's not that I dislike spending time with the family. It's that I feel like my opinions are consistently overlooked. It feels quite dismissive. So no, I don't wish to live together indefinitely. I'd appreciate it if my feelings were acknowledged and valued more. If you really don't want to live with us, then perhaps you should consider divorcing my son. You wouldn't want that, would you? If not, just stay and continue fulfilling your responsibilities in this household, my mother retorted sharply. Overwhelmed by frustration, I replied, if I must handle all of that, I would actually prefer a divorce. I love your son, but our relationship has been strained lately. Please, just move into the new house with us. It's more convenient for everyone, my sister said with a hint of sarcasm. Sorry about the confusion during the house search, but now we can live happily as a family of 3 without your involvement. We've settled all the details of the contract, so don't worry. All that's left is for you to manage the house payments and compensate me. Compensate. Payments. What are you talking about? I agreed to handle the down payment, but I never consented to any additional compensation, I responded, feeling both confused and overwhelmed. I have a few serious accusations to make. Starting with your unfaithfulness. Did you think I wouldn't find out? I revealed. Turning the tables. After noticing that my husband began visiting his parents' house more frequently after our marriage, I grew suspicious and hired a private investigator. It turned out he wasn't just visiting family but was also seeing a coworker. I had only recently discovered this betrayal and had planned to discuss it. At this point, it appeared that he was oblivious to the fact that the detective was monitoring his activities. I worried that he might attempt to hide his behavior if I approached him about it before making any decisions about where our relationship was headed. Consequently, I took the extra step to ensure that the detective gathered photographic proof as well to support any findings. My husband was visibly shocked when I disclosed this, clearly caught off guard by my investigative efforts. Both my mother-in-law and sister-in-law were also stunned by the revelation. Unsure of how to respond to the unfolding drama, she appeared visibly shaken by the revelation, her eyes wide with surprise. With responsibilities we weren't aware of. And you knew this all along, didn't you? She accused sharply. I was indeed taken aback by their astonishment when I revealed the evidence through a series of photographs. All three of them scrutinized each image intently as I spread them out before them. No way. I can't believe this is actually happening, they exclaimed in disbelief. My suspicions about your activities had been growing, which is precisely why I had you under close surveillance. It might have seemed overly cautious, observing how frequently you left our home. Some might argue that a man could stray once or twice. And if one cannot even endure that, then perhaps they're being somewhat overzealous. As for the financial restitution you mentioned paying to your sister, why should there be any compensation at all? I haven't been unfaithful, so I owe nothing. Sister, it has come to light that you have been siphoning funds from me. Haven't you? You've been pocketing money intended for our utility bills and taking cash from my wallet. Did you think these actions would go unnoticed? If you're going to level such serious accusations, you'd better be ready to back them up with solid evidence. If it's concrete proof you require, I have video footage that I discreetly obtained, I retorted, catching them off guard. I'm also aware that you borrowed money from me as well and then proceeded with your deceit, even though you claimed you couldn't possibly borrow from Ryan. Circumstances forced your hand when no other options were left, I added, my words leaving my mother-in-law speechless. Now, I would appreciate it if you could just manage the compensation and take care of the house payments since the property is indeed in Ryan's name. All financial responsibilities now fall squarely on your shoulders. Subsequently, I arranged for the three of them to relocate to a new residence at an address I provided. The house where we had all been living had its lease terminated at the renewal period, prompting me to move back into my parents' home. Initially, I worried I might feel isolated after the divorce, but surrounded by my parents and my cat, loneliness was far from what I felt. In fact, I found a certain relief in being distanced from my husband's family. However, my peace was soon disturbed by persistent calls from my mother-in-law, which led me to suspect she had pieced together the plan I had devised to prevent her from visiting. Deciding to address her concerns, I picked up the phone. What on earth is going on? You tricked us. Do you think this is acceptable? She demanded, her tone laced with frustration. I responded calmly. I merely found the house you all expressed interest in, and I went ahead with the contract only after receiving your approval. The house that we acquired came with its own farm, a detail that was not disclosed to us beforehand. We were never informed about these farming responsibilities that come with the property, she lamented. You were aware of these obligations, weren't you? She accused. The property I selected boasts a large garden and even includes the pets you wanted. Considering your sister is currently unemployed, perhaps she could manage the farming duties. I was merely acting according to your specifications. How can we possibly take on cattle farming? This isn't what we envisioned. Living here is out of the question, she exclaimed in frustration. It's too late to back out now. The contract is already in my husband's name. Please try to make do until you can find a new place. I cannot forgive you for this oversight. Be prepared for the consequences. Didn't all of you agree and sign the contract? Therefore, no matter the circumstances, I hold the advantage. How could you let this happen? When did you arrange all this? Did you suspect we were trying to manipulate the situation? She questioned. I had unintentionally overheard that conversation. Regrettably, the decision is final. We must adjust to life on the farm, with all the evidence clearly laid out and undeniable. There's no room for debate. To ensure the legitimacy of this transaction, I had everyone involved sign a document in advance, which helped prevent any disputes later on. Everyone was keen to move forward, signing the documents quickly and without any suspicions. As it turned out, based on information from a coworker managing my husband's affairs, our old house was sold, and we have now relocated to the rural home with the farm that I selected. It took some time to find a property that involved farm management, but the effort was certainly worthwhile. The outcome was favorable. I successfully secured compensation from my husband and am now enjoying a comfortable life at my parents' home. Whatever the future holds, I am determined to rely solely on myself. Despite numerous requests from my husband and mother-in-law for my assistance, I find no advantage in aiding them and have consequently blocked their contact numbers. To stay updated, I rely on information from my coworker. I have explicitly directed my coworker to maintain a firm stance and not offer them any concessions. Consequently, it looks like they will continue to live in the farmhouse indefinitely. Do you have any thoughts after hearing this story? Tell us in the comments section. Next, to give you another story. Let's continue to see it. Decked out in my finest attire, I made my way to the lavish wedding of my sister, the bride. Despite the joyous atmosphere, she took a moment to disparage me. Even with makeup, a gutter girl like you can't change. Do you get it? Would you mind not showing up at my important wedding? She remarked coldly. Ironically, she was the one who had sent me an invitation to this very event. It became apparent that her invitation was a mere ruse, aimed at ridiculing me. How malicious could she get? This cruelty was typical for her. She seemed to derive pleasure from my distress or disgust. But today, my reaction was different. I couldn't muster any anger. Instead, I struggled to suppress my laughter, knowing she was oblivious to the dramatic twist about to occur at her own wedding, a scenario far removed from the congratulatory cheers she anticipated. Allow me to share a bit about myself. I'm a single office worker, and professionally, things are progressing quite well. In terms of my personal life, I'm almost cohabiting with my boyfriend, David. We have been together since our college days, now rounding up to 5 years. You might assume that such a long relationship would hit a stagnant phase or undergo some turmoil. But not with David. There's never been any hint of infidelity. And he consistently shows his affection for me. I might sound boastful, but David is exceptionally attractive, to the point where he could easily draw obsessive admirers. Despite this, I know looks aren't everything. Yet I still marvel at how I managed to date someone so dashing. My days have been filled with immense happiness, and thoughts of marriage occasionally cross my mind. However, this serene period was disrupted when I received a call from my sister, Tracy, 2 years my senior. Our relationship has always been strained. More accurately, Tracy has harbored a one-sided animosity towards me for as long as I can remember. I've maintained my distance as a result. Tracy has been particularly cruel about my appearance. Despite our familial resemblance, she has consistently branded me as unattractive, with taunts like, "Looking in the mirror won't help an ugly girl, don't come near me," or "Your ugliness might rub off," and even, "Don't have kids because it would be a pity if they inherited your ugliness." Because of this, Two had developed a significant complex about my looks and increasingly despised being at home. Whenever Tracy would verbally attack me in our parents' absence, I found it unbearable and sought their advice. Unfortunately, they dismissed her remarks as mere sibling rivalry, failing to grasp the profound effect they had on me. At the time, I didn't fully understand the term complex, nor could I articulate to my parents the feelings of rejection and disgust I harbored towards my own appearance. Consequently, when I started university, I moved out as if to flee from the situation. Tracy, who tended to keep her distance, only came home a few times a year, which thankfully reduced our interactions while I was at university. Fortunately, no one at university directly insulted my looks, and I managed to enjoy campus life. Fast forward to today. I am fortunate to have a supportive group of friends and a loving boyfriend, which has somewhat alleviated my old insecurities. Just as I was settling into this happier phase, my phone rang. It was Tracy. Part of me wanted to ignore the call, aware that interacting with her often led to painful exchanges. But I feared that avoiding her would only exacerbate things the next time we met. Reluctantly, I answered, "Wow. Long time no see, Kathy. Thanks to not seeing your ugly face. I've been very cheerful and healthy. Oh. And I got a boyfriend. Well, even if an ugly girl like you does, he'll dump you soon enough," she mocked me immediately. It felt like she had rehearsed her insults, a testament to her spiteful diligence. Talking with Tracy was undeniably stressful, so I quickly attempted to steer the conversation toward why she had called. With a mix of scorn and glee, Tracy announced she was getting married and would send an invitation, so I needed to provide her with my current address. I was stunned. Tracy, who seemed to have not only a boyfriend but a fiancé. It appeared the significance of marriage might have diminished over the years. Yet here was someone ready to commit to Tracy for a lifetime, a decision not to be taken lightly. As I tried to process the news, Tracy continued non-stop, bragging about her fiancé. "My boyfriend comes from a family of doctors. He's extremely handsome and very kind. Oh. And you can come to the wedding. But don't talk to him. Okay? Would it be too presumptuous for an ugly girl to converse with him?" I briefly pondered the prevalence of heirs in medical families before being jolted back to the reality of Tracy's unreasonable and illogical actions. It was unclear whether she genuinely wanted me at her wedding or just wanted to show off. Nonetheless, I chose to accept the invitation for the time being. It was a once-in-a-lifetime event. And although I had no desire to offer congratulations, it seemed appropriate to attend. Certainly, if it were my own wedding, Tracy would not be on my guest list. Later that evening, as David arrived at my place after work, I relayed the news of Tracy's upcoming nuptials. Knowing David's generally positive disposition, even towards someone like Tracy whom I disliked, he would likely respond with encouragement. However, the situation this time was slightly different. Recently, I had noticed that David seemed unusually distracted, lost in his thoughts. Each day, his distant gaze grew my concerns, prompting me to ask him what was troubling him so deeply. Initially hesitant, David finally opened up, his voice barely a whisper. "I guess I'll end up worrying you anyway," and he began to share his concerns. He disclosed that he had been receiving a series of prank calls at his workplace. These weren't just random pranks. They were personal attacks aimed directly at him. Given his profession, it wasn't unusual for him to deal with upset individuals. But these calls were different, and he had no idea who might be behind them. Although the calls hadn't significantly affected his work yet, they left him contemplating possible steps to address the situation. Hence his distraction. David wasn't focused on the upcoming joyful event. Like Tracy's wedding, he wondered aloud whether he should report the matter to the police. This wasn't his first encounter with harassment, and although he had become somewhat accustomed to such incidents, becoming complacent felt wrong. For now, they were just calls, but there was no telling what might follow. Despite the potential consequences for the perpetrator, David hesitated to involve law enforcement over what might seem to be just prank calls. His inherent kindness wrestled with his need for personal safety. He shared his concerns about how reporting might heavily impact the caller's life. Yet, to me, David's well-being was paramount over the troubles brought by the calls that interrupted by an unknown, troublesome stranger. I sensed his underlying anxiety and fear. I reassured him that if the situation escalated, we should consult the police without hesitation, as his safety was my utmost priority. We decided to shift our focus to more positive matters, particularly the upcoming celebration. As David and I redirected our conversation away from his troubles, time seemed to fly by, and soon the day of the wedding arrived. At the wedding venue, I went to the family waiting room where I met Tracy. She greeted me with a smirk, her words sharp and unwelcoming. "I never thought you'd actually come. But look at you, all dressed up. No matter how beautifully you do your makeup, it won't change anything. You're a disgrace to our family. Please, don't attend my important wedding." Normally, such harsh words from Tracy would have provoked me into a heated argument, stirring unpleasant feelings on such a supposed joyful day. However, today was different. Instead of anger, I couldn't help but giggle, leaving Tracy puzzled. When she asked why I was amused, I couldn't hold back any longer. Because today isn't your wedding, Tracy. It's mine, I revealed, smiling broadly as I recalled the moment I received her elaborate, handmade invitation. I had immediately noticed several odd details. Particularly, the date clashed with a very special day of my own, the day I was to be wed. As I previously mentioned, I had no intention of inviting Tracy to my wedding. Mainly because I hadn't even disclosed to her that I was getting married. This might place some fault on me. But I never anticipated that our weddings would coincide on the same date. Furthermore, there were additional complications, such as Tracy's partner feeling suspicious about the whole situation. I reached out to our parents as they were likely to be aware of Tracy's wedding plans, especially since she had sent me an invitation. Upon contacting them, they confirmed their knowledge of the event but also expressed their discomfort about certain oddities. Tracy had announced her marriage but had never introduced her fiancé to us. All she seemed to focus on was wedding preparations. My husband was already distressed by the overlapping wedding dates. And the name of Tracy's intended groom further fueled our suspicion. It was exactly the same as mine. First and last. This striking coincidence seemed too bizarre. And it made me question the entire situation, plagued with doubts about Tracy's claims. I decided to hire a detective to investigate her background. The detective found no trace of a boyfriend in Tracy's past, but rather a disturbing closeness to my fiancé, David. It became apparent that Tracy might have been responsible for the anonymous prank calls at David's workplace, the hospital. Her assertions of being engaged to a doctor's heir, a description that perfectly matched David, now appeared to be completely fabricated. Faced with Tracy's delusional behavior, I considered involving the police but hesitated due to not wanting to cause a scene or upset our parents right before my wedding. I shared these findings only with David. It seemed Tracy had developed an infatuation with David, lost touch with reality, and convinced herself that she was the one marrying him. On our wedding day, Tracy confrontationally asked in the family room about the timing of her supposed wedding dress fitting. When I confronted her to try to snap her back to reality, she reacted violently, declaring that I was just a temporary distraction and that David would ultimately choose her. This led to our father stepping in. And when David came to check on me, Tracy's agitation escalated, causing her to loudly demand David join her. This ruckus attracted the attention of the security team. In that tumultuous moment, it became painfully clear that Tracy was not mentally stable, and her disturbing actions cast a shadow over what was meant to be a joyous occasion. Despite the disruptions, the ceremony went on without any further issues while her behavior continued to align with earlier concerns, reinforcing our decision not to cancel the wedding in light of David's family and friends being present. Canceling would have only played into Tracy's disruptive narrative. As the ceremony continued, my parents, initially uneasy about Tracy, shifted their focus and ultimately were moved to tears of joy as they celebrated my union with David. In retrospect, the wedding was a triumph despite the challenges. Security escorted Tracy away, and she was later questioned by the police. Her actions at the wedding and her obsessive behavior towards David, though initially concerning, were ultimately addressed appropriately. The prank calls Tracy made to the hospital where David worked were too serious to ignore. When the police interrogated her, her responses were disjointed and unclear. This led them to perform a drug test, which she passed. Consequently, she underwent a psychiatric evaluation, revealing that she was suffering from a mental illness that impaired her ability to differentiate between delusion and reality. This condition accounted for her previous derogatory comments towards me and her mistaken belief that David returned her feelings. Her obsession grew to the extent that she employed a detective agency to investigate David, mirroring actions I had once taken against her. Even after learning that David and I were dating, she continued to believe that he would choose her over me at our wedding. Understanding her actions as mere symptoms of her illness was challenging. However, David, who was also a target of her delusions, advocated for a compassionate and supportive approach towards Tracy as a family. Despite the difficulties, David's views on addressing mental health issues with empathy and support resonated with us. Inspired by David's compassion, my family and I committed to supporting Tracy's recovery and reintegration into society. We resolved to create a supportive environment for her post-recovery, dedicating ourselves to her successful return to the community. This decision highlighted our commitment to addressing mental health issues not just with immediate actions but through long-term supportive measures. Do you have any thoughts after hearing the above two stories? We'd like to hear your thoughts. Tell us in the comments section. That's all for today's story. Please subscribe and give a thumb up. See you next time.